Welcome to Liberty Lockdown. Please scan your barcode. Your liberty ain't gone, but yeah, it's on hold. Where did it come from and where did it... Welcome everybody to a live stream impromptu edition of Liberty Lockdown. I did not expect to be doing this today, but there was a little bit of news that got made, and the libertarian world was lit on fire by it. It doesn't take much for us to get at each other's throats, and this certainly did it. The Libertarian Party of Colorado and the GOP Party Colorado have come to some sort of an agreement where the Libertarian Party will not run a candidate if the Colorado GOP puts up people that we can get behind. I think that's kind of realistic, but instead of just having my opinion, I thought I would bring on someone that was involved in this negotiation. I don't think that he expected it to create quite such a firestorm either, but I think this will be a really interesting discussion. Dave Williams, welcome aboard, sir.
Yes, thanks for having me, Clint. Appreciate being here.
Absolutely. So go ahead and tell me who you are. What was your involvement in this?
Sure. I'm currently the Republican Party chairman. I was just elected in March, and prior to that, I was in the state legislature for the Colorado House of Representatives. And it's a big reason why we were even able to interface with the Libertarian Party and my counterpart, Hannah Goodman. She watched my history and my voting record on full display when I was in the House of Representatives. I was a member of Young Americans for Liberty and their Hazlitt coalition. You really don't get to be a part of that unless you're a little based, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So... So Hannah, she reached out to me and she wanted to work on issues and coalition building on common areas of interest. And we just started talking, and we started discussing what we could really do to make some sort of difference in Colorado. Right now, Colorado is under one-party rule. They've been dominating for the last 20 years with very few exceptions in between. So at the end of the day, I floated this idea. I said, look, I understand why Republicans get a bad rap. They certainly earn a lot of the criticism that's coming from many different people, regardless of their political persuasion. I talk about this often, how Republicans always make promises to limit government or lower spending or cut taxes and regulation, and then they never end up actually doing that. This recent debt ceiling fiasco is a great example of that. I came out against that very forcefully. I praised two congressmen here in our delegation. It was Ken Buck and Lauren Boebert, who both voted against that. And then I condemned Congressman Doug Lamborn, who went the other way and voted with Joe Biden and McCarthy. So I understand exactly what people are saying. I'm an anti-establishment Republican trying to reform it from within, very much like Rand Paul or Thomas Massey, for example. And so when I gave this idea to Hannah, I said, look, what if we could nominate better candidates that would actually be about liberty and limiting government and be pro-freedom? Would that help us, come to some sort of agreement? And potentially avoid a spoiler effect. I know there's a little bit of a controversy on whether or not that exists. I know that there are some people that say it doesn't happen. Other people say it always happens. I'm sort of in the middle. I think it happens sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. And Congressional District 8, when our nominee lost to the Democrat by the slimmest of margins, while the Libertarian candidate took about 4% of the votes away, that probably made a difference. We'll never know because we can never get into the minds of those 4%ers. But at the end of the day, it was worth exploring. And so Hannah and I just talked about it more and more, and we came to an agreement in principle. And right now, we're ironing out details on how to make that happen. I've already notified the National Republican Congressional Committee. I've notified the minority leaders in the state House and state Senate that, hey, if we want to try and collaborate here and get better candidates that have appeal to non-Republican voters, this is the way forward. You can run whoever you want, establishment, but just remember it's going to cost you anywhere between 3 to 5% or even more if we don't try to play ball. And so that was my idea, and Hannah agreed in principle, and now we're just trying to figure out how to execute it and innovate.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is kind of the paleo strategy, but with the Libertarian Party being the leverage by which we can demand essentially that there be a candidate that we actually could support, which is rare but not unheard of. And I think that this has the potential to make it a more common factor or common occurrence. And I think that would be good. It's perplexing to me that so many in the Libertarian Party are adamantly opposed to this. I guess I can understand why to some extent, but at the same time, like, if the Libertarian candidate can't win, but they can actually, leverage their small vote tally to get better candidates that are actually elected, it seems like a win-win from my vantage point. I assume that's what you're attempting to do, is to get, not just subdue the LP folks, but actually create a better GOP. Is that fair?
No, that's correct. And by the way, I understand the hesitation, the skepticism, even the outright opposition to it. For far too long, Republicans have done this bait and switch thing where they promise the world and then
Right.
they don't follow through. I want to let every one of your listeners who are libertarians understand one thing. They do that to rank and file Republicans too. Right. We get upset with our elected leaders just as much as you do when they talk about liberty, when they talk about less government, and then they never actually get to reducing the size and scope and influence of government. It's an ever expansive process that they tend to engage in. Right. They don't care typically if government grows, so long as they're the ones at the switch holding the levers of power.
Right.
And that's something that we got to stop. We got to break that mold. There's a reason why, people, regardless of the political affiliation that you may have, don't trust politicians. They don't trust Democrats or Republicans, and for good reason, because both of them have tended to sell out to the corporate interests who really want to control what's going on. There's often talk about the uniparty or controlled opposition within our system of government, and there's a lot of truth to that. As far as I'm concerned, and the numbers bear this out, especially in a lot of other places, both political parties have sold us out. They're all a bunch of crooks most of the time. And if we're ever going to break this cycle, then we have to start demanding better quality candidates. And I for one think we can achieve that success by working within the party and reforming it from within. And there are a lot of folks that have taken over a number of state Republican parties and are pushing for similar changes and reforms. And I think the only reason that this is even possible is because someone like Hannah, who is a part of the Mises Caucus, and someone like me were able to get elected around the same time and come to some sort of agreement. Ultimately, I want to use this as a way to encourage and persuade wayward Republicans or Republicans who may not agree with me that, hey, it's within your best interest to actually go for more limited government, pro-liberty, pro-freedom candidates. And the question I pose to any of your libertarian audience here is, if we could nominate someone like Rand Paul or Ron Paul, are you really going to want to oppose that? I don't think so.
Well, my stance has always been, if we have a GOP candidate that is running of that ilk, we ought not to be running a competitor anyways. There are some in the LP that believe we should be running a candidate regardless all the time, and I just don't see the logic there. I mean, one, it's a waste of resources, but two, you want that guy to win. I mean, you do. You want Ron Paul to be in Congress for 20 plus years or 30 years or whatever it was. So to run an LP candidate that might be the difference maker in him getting voted out and having some Democrat put in just seems totally crazy to me. All right, so let's get into the brass tacks. What is the leverage? I mean, what are the assurances that, sure, we don't run an LP candidate and then you guys run a GOP candidate, that it'll actually be someone that we can get behind? How can we actually, screw you guys up if you screw us over?
Right. That's a fair question. We're still working on those details. One of the ideas that I floated to Hannah was, let's create a pledge together. Let's put some items on paper and ask all of our primary candidates to sign it. They can agree or not agree. This is a free country. They can run. And if they don't conform to, the basic standards that we're trying to work out right now, then libertarians, go run someone. you know, fine, go do it. But and if they're unwilling to, you know, be about sound money or, you know, ending endless wars or making sure that government is not spending beyond its means, but rather actually returning taxpayer dollars to the citizens, then, you know, don't support them. Go run a libertarian candidate and let them suffer those consequences. So that's more or less what we've worked out. I'm obviously going to be a liaison between the establishment and the Libertarian Party of Colorado. I'm going to be helping to facilitate those conversations and making sure that my counterparts within my party understand the choices that are before us. You know, this is in a lot of ways a time of choosing. Do we want to continue to be ruled by radical Democrats who are absolutely not about liberty, but the opposite? They're about tyranny. Or do we want to go on a different path? So, you know, the choice is theirs. But I think we could put together a pledge of some sort, make people sign it. That might be able to give assurances. I'm happy to also use the infrastructure of my party to make sure people, candidates rather, are upholding their end of the bargain. You know, one of the things that I was proud of when I was in the legislature was that if I gave you my commitment, you could count on it. Because one of the things that's rare in politics is a kept promise. And I want
people that say what they'll do. It's extraordinarily rare. Yes.
Right. And I wanted to be able to do that, you know, and I want to do it here because I love Colorado. I don't want to leave it. I don't want to move to Florida. I don't want to move to Tennessee. I don't want to move to any other state. Not that they're bad. I prefer Colorado.
I get it, man. No, I get it.
I want to fight for it.
Yeah, well, I'm born and raised California, and I did flee to you know, Florida, so I understand. You know, you're at your you're at the end of your rope here. And I was just recently in Colorado for a speaking gig, and I started to see the same homeless encampments and things like that I now saw in San Diego right before I left, and I was floored because, you know, my father was from Colorado Springs, and I went there, you know, once a year, basically my entire childhood for some holiday, Thanksgiving, Christmas, or whatever. And it's not getting better, folks. Like it is degrading. And I think that this is a product of, you know, really radical progressive policies that ultimately don't respect property rights and don't address any of the drug and homeless issues that have destroyed a vast majority of the state of California, which is probably the most beautiful place on earth. It's really tragic. And now I'm seeing, unfortunately, many of the California expats that fled to Colorado or didn't learn their lesson, and they're voting the same direction. What's weird to me is that Jared Polis, the governor there, I know he's a Democrat, but and I'm actually friends with Justin Amash, but he loves Polis, and he says he's like the most libertarian governor and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, for the life of me, I can't wrap my head around that one. He's, you know, going after AR-15s, you know, was pro-lockdown. Are you a libertarian if you're those things? Like that to me are just like instant strikes. So is there a potential with this alliance that you guys could actually get a GOP governor in there that's liberty-minded?
I mean, long term, you know, one of the interesting things about this, the announcement of this agreement, was that Governor Polis weighed in on the issue twice. Twice he talked about it. Now, if you know anything about politics, Political 101 will tell you that if you're the superior party and you're dominating in every fashion in the elections, you typically don't care what your ineffective opposition has been doing. But he went ahead and he swung down and Twittered. You know,
Yep.
He swung down and mocked our deal, and even got into a little bit of a fight justifying his brand of libertarianism, which is not true. I mean, one of the greatest tricks that Jared Polis has ever been able to pull off is making people think that he's libertarian. When he was in Congress, he probably voted on a lot of stuff that Justin Amash or Thomas Massey did. Not 100%, obviously, but there's some common areas. But I assure you, he's the most radical Democrat tyrant that we've ever had in Colorado. And what I think is telling is that we are, with this potential alliance, we're now cutting into his narrative. He doesn't get to define what libertarianism is. He doesn't get to define what liberty or limited government He doesn't get the monopoly on it anymore, and that's the beauty of competition. We are now competing, and I don't think Hannah and I really understood, this going into it. But after seeing how the Democrats and the media, have tried to downplay this or discredit it, or even try to build wedges between us, I think we're starting to see that we're injecting competition into their narrative, and we're giving the people an option to know what true limited government could look like, and not just buy the lies from people like Jared Polis.
Yeah. Well, and I hope it's fruitful, honestly. I am a member of the Libertarian Party, and I am highly skeptical of the GOP. I think that they have rested on their laurels and failed the American people repeatedly for decades. That being said, the best politicians that are in office and have been in office in my lifetime have been in the GOP. That's just, these are all facts, So I think that if there is any way for the Libertarian Party to leverage their 3 to 5% or whatever their vote tally is to get better options that are actually elected and put into positions of power that can reclaim human liberty, we're kind of running out of time here. And I think that odd bedfellows will be the name of the game moving forward. For instance, I went to the End the Damn Wars rally in Washington, D.C. in this January, and I was marching alongside communists, weird. Like, never would have thought I'd be doing that. But when things are existential, you kind of you ally with whoever is pushing in the same direction as you on particular individual items. And I really do pray that you can actually put in GOP candidates that are strong. Is this state level, or are you guys looking at federal, this alliance on both fronts?
State and federal. So we can't do anything about the presidential race because that's a whole different system from what we're talking about. If you know anything about Colorado, we have a hybrid caucus primary system, and it's even more bifurcated with the presidential race. So that's going to play out how it's going to play out. But every other race from the state level, so state legislature and up, that's what we're talking about, and we're really focusing in on these competitive races like Congressional District 8, where we narrowly lost that election. The candidate who was in that election didn't do herself any favors because she wasn't the kind of candidate that libertarians would be able to live with, and we want to avoid that, and that's why we're moving forward on this deal. And I hope it works too. I think the only way forward in a place like Colorado anyway is to build coalitions. We've been decimated by Democratic rule for such a long time because they have just been they've been able to rig the system to their favor in so many different ways, from campaign finance laws that allow them to funnel money through their dark money groups to even allowing them to illegally ballot harvest in Colorado without much enforcement or even attention. So they've worked this system pretty well, and the only way that we can overcome that is by figuring out outside the box methods that can carry forward a message of liberty to folks that desperately want it. I don't know anyone that doesn't want to be able to live the lives they want to live, and ultimately the government should be about protecting your rights and your liberties and your property, and that's pretty much it. There's not much more it needs to get involved in, and if I agree with that and the Libertarian Party agrees with that, then there's no reason we can't find common ground. Yeah,
I think that's fair. A question for you, since I don't know the Colorado voting base very, very well. Are libertarian ideas palatable to the GOP voters? Like, are there certain things that libertarians believe in that would be non-starters for the GOP voter?
Yeah, I mean, there probably is, right? There is a divide on how to handle, for instance, the drug war, right? I think the drug war has been a complete failure myself. But how do you go about really getting a grip on that, especially if you're a Republican, has been quite a puzzle to solve. I think most people would agree that dumping billions of dollars into this war where we militarize the police is not working.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people within the GOP that would also say, well, where does this end, right? Are we going to legalize cocaine, for example? And these are issues that our party, we're still wrestling with. And so there's going to be some disagreement on areas like that. But by and large, Colorado and even the Republican Party here does have a libertarian streak. I mean, that's a reason why Jared Polis tries to paint himself as a libertarian.
Exactly.
He's figured out that the marketplace kind of has this, leave me alone, get off my lawn attitude. And I got to hand it to him. He's been able to trick the population into thinking he's doing libertarian stuff, even though he's not. So yeah,
how is he tricking people? If you go for gun bans and you supported lockdowns, am I wrong? Are those not two things that he's done?
He has done those things. I think people are waking up. The only problem is he's in his second term and he's term limited. So now he probably feels like he can be a little bit more comfortable doing some of these things. But at the end of the day, the reason he's been able to trick people into this is because he's leveraged taxpayer resources masterfully. Whether you think it's right or wrong, he's leveraged those resources he has as governor, as well as the bully pulpit, to be a libertarian on issues that he knows he'll never have to deal with. For example, he constantly ran on a platform of lowering taxes. He's smart enough to know that his party, who controls the legislature, will never put that on his desk.
Right.
So talk is cheap, and he understands that, and that he's more than happy to say that and campaign on it, while making sure that all the other major issues Democrats have grown to accept, as long as he can cater to them on those things and not talk about them, he's going to be in a safe spot. And that's really what he's been able to do. He's been really good at targeting specific issues that he knows will go nowhere because of his legislature, and then leveraging sort of those positions to paint himself as a moderate. But he is not. I worked under two governors when I was in the legislature, and I assure you he is the most radical, left-wing, progressive governor we've ever seen. He is, I mean, you said it best. I mean, he forced vaccinations, lockdowns, trying to get rid of something that this is something that should be replicated all over the country. But we have something called the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, where you can't raise taxes unless you go to the vote of the people, among other things. Well, in addition to that, if there's a surplus in taxpayer revenue, we get a refund. The state has to give us a refund because it's our money. Well,
what a novel concept.
I know. Governor Polis, trying to have his cake and eat it too, is trying to eliminate in the long term those refunds. We are seeing an increase in our property taxes, and so in an effort to actually lower the property taxes, and I say that loosely, lower, he is trying to take our refunds and apply it to the property taxes, so the increase isn't as big. But if you extrapolate it out 10 years, we will no longer have refunds ever again because of his scheme. Well, he's
very libertarian. Very libertarian. Right. Taxation is theft, but if we take more than we need, you don't get it back. Makes sense.
Right.
God, I really don't like the guy. I really don't. I rage against him online all the time. All right. Well, before I ask you some follow-up questions, I just want to let people know we are live right now. If you guys have questions for Dave, feel free to leave it in the chat, and I will ask them if they are reasonable, or if they're unreasonable but funny. I can pull those up as well. All right. So first off, or not first off, but before we get into the Q&A section for my audience, what is the future of Colorado if we fail?
It will turn out like California. I mean, and I'm using California because it's an easy example, but you can look at other places like Chicago, New York, Washington State, especially in those urban centers where there's dense populations. It's going to turn into that. And I think if we don't make our stand now, if we don't come up with ideas that forge good coalitions that can advance liberty, then we are going to end up having a crazy amount of crime, a terrible atmosphere for raising families or running businesses.
Yep.
Like I said, go look at San Francisco. That's the future of Colorado, especially in Denver. In fact, Denver's getting that way. When people are actively... That's
where I was. It was not pretty.
No, it's not. I remember when I was at the Capitol, State Patrol would pick up syringes, before school kids would come and visit the Capitol. They wanted to at least make sure that the Capitol seemed a little bit pretty. But stuff like that is happening all over the place. And there's this attitude and I'm a big civil liberties guy. I rage against police abuse and corruption all the time, but there's got to be some law and order around here. And right now, Democrats are all about hugging criminals and allowing them to get away with murder, literally murder, and doing nothing about it. There needs to be some. I mean, there is a purpose for government, and it's to protect property and life and liberty and all that.
Right.
And if we can't even do that, then you're damn sure going to see it devolve into a place like San Francisco.
Well, yeah, if it can't do that, then it's not fit to exist. I mean, that's just the reality, because those are the basic tenets of why we put up with government and taxation and everything else. So that's why I fled California, because I was like, I'm giving you how much of my income, and I'm also like jeopardized every day. It's totally, it's insane. But just to, sympathize with your plight with Polis, same thing with Newsom. Newsom is running on how much freer Californians are than Floridians, which is just like, I can't even explain to you how egregious that lie is as someone who moved from California to Florida. It's just gaslighting to the highest level, to the point that I like genuinely feel like I'm losing my mind. Like, how is this guy running on, we are free in California? You son of a bitch, you locked down businesses for over a year, like well over a year. You mandated corporate products be injected into everyone living here. I mean, that's lunacy. It's so unfree, unliberty-minded, un-American, communist or fascist or whatever label you want to put on it. But that's somehow they managed to frame it that way. And I saw Jared Polis tweeting out just yesterday. He's like, well, are we talking about freedom when it comes to, gay rights and trans rights and all this stuff? I'm like, what rights are they lacking? I honestly don't know. I mean, is this just a political football that they're using to divide and conquer? Because it sure feels like it to me.
I mean, gaslighting is an appropriate way to put it. Jared Polis does not get to define what liberty is. As much as he wants to define what it is, he's not the final arbiter. And it's come high time that liberty-loving individuals, push back on him and say it's not. I'm sorry. If you're forcing people to give up their tax dollars and then lie to them about how you're doing them a favor, that's not liberty.
No.
If you're helping criminals to get away with harming people or others or their property, that's not liberty. And by the way, if we're talking about the gay rights issues, go to a Muslim country, ask them how free they are there compared to here. This is absolute gaslighting, and no one, I don't think any serious person in the Republican Party or any other major party is trying to outlaw homosexuality, but they again want to make this some wedge issue that's non-existent.
No, I mean, from the best I can tell, even the more radical GOP folks, they're just upset about the curriculum when it comes to like indoctrinating their children into this stuff. And I, for one, side with them on that. I don't think that you should be teaching about sex and gender and all that stuff to, 8, 9, and 10-year-olds. I think it's lunacy. I'm not sure that I want the state involved in that education process at all. In fact, I would rather there be no public schools, but that we'll set that aside. If there is going to be a public school, I sure as hell don't want some lunatic progressive teacher that's, calling my daughter, he, him, and confusing the hell out of him. It's like, it's just very dangerous. And I honestly, it seems like such a reasonable ask, particularly after the forced masking and the forced vaccination campaigns that they tried to propagate over the past 3 years, the Zoom education process, the torment that they put the kids through. And now on top of that, you have, really like sexual progressive ideology that's being pushed on children, not teenagers, but actual children. It's crazy. It's totally crazy. And I think that, I honestly don't see much bigotry from the GOP side when they come to, talk about these issues. It's more like, this is just nuts. Like, what are you guys doing? So.
I think most in the Republican Party, they just want to maintain their parental rights. We have the responsibility of upbringing our children, and I guarantee you, if we don't feed them or we don't shelter them, it's going to be our necks on the line, right? I mean, so it would stand to reason that if we have the responsibility of raising the children, then we have the right to dictate, how they're raised. And if the state government's going to come in and mandate certain ideologies that people disagree with, then that's an absolute no-no. It's a complete violation of the First Amendment. The government has no business dictating the content of our beliefs. Their only role is to make sure we have the ability to express it and associate with those who also express it.
Right. Well, and I think that in many ways it's a violation of the separation of church and state, because I really do think that they're teaching religion to kids in public schools. It's not a formal religion. It's not one that's advertised as a religion, but it certainly strikes me as a cult. And the consequences are only starting to be felt, but they are significant, and it's going to get worse. So I'm glad to see that people are starting to push back. A lot of libertarians will disagree with me on this. I don't care. I don't care. I think it's wrong. I think it's wrong that they're propagandizing children with this stuff, and it is damaging them. If you look at the anxiety, depression, suicide, ideology, I don't know, not ideology, whatever. When you think about it, it's all of those trends are pointed in the wrong direction, and it's a tragedy.
Libertarians should at least be able to agree that we shouldn't allow taxpayer dollars to be put towards it, right?
Well, I would hope
at a minimum. And we all know that when we're seeing the progressive left push this ideology, they're not doing it on their own nickel. They're using taxpayer dollars through the school system, or even through the federal government or the state government that gives schools money to do this kind of stuff. And you may, if you want to adjudicate whether it's right or wrong to talk about these issues with children, we should at least be able to come to an agreement that the government doesn't get to spend our money to do it.
Yeah, I'm not telling parents that they shouldn't be able to tell their kids whenever they feel that they're ready for any of these issues. I'm just saying it shouldn't be a curriculum item.
Sure.
It can't be a curriculum item. It's insane that it's a curriculum item.
Right.
And as far as I'm concerned, I'm very disappointed in the GOP that they haven't used their leverage with the debt ceiling. As you said, you opposed it, which I appreciate. The debt ceiling increase, they should have been using that leverage to defund the Department of Education and also defund the FBI. My opinion would be the CIA as well, but we could set that aside. I just can't believe that they're not realizing what time it is. Like, this is really do or die time. If you've looked into the corruption that exists within the FBI over the past 3 years, not to mention the past 100 years of their existence, but it's really stark now. And I just don't think if they aren't pushed back against very aggressively and soon, we don't really have a country moving forward, or at least if we do have one, it's going to be a very violent and dangerous place. Speaking of, I'd like to get your opinion on, the charges against Trump and everything that's been going on with that over the past couple of days, if you've been staying on top of it.
Sure. I haven't been able to actually read the indictments, but this is what I've said. I said, look, we do have a country of laws. We're a country of laws or a country of men. And if for whatever reason, any politician, I don't care if it's Donald Trump or your dog catcher, if they've broken the law, then they do need to be held accountable. With that said, again, I want to qualify this. I haven't read the indictment. I do think he's more likely than not innocent of what the Biden administration is trying to do. I do believe there is election interference going on here. I think this is a distraction on Biden's part to cover up his bribery that he received from a foreign national, and of course the good work that the House Oversight Committee is uncovering with respect to that information that the FBI has tried to put a lid on. So I think we should be very, very mindful of the two-tiered justice system that we're seeing being played out here under Joe Biden, and that regardless of what you think of President Trump, he should be able to have his day in court. Everyone's innocent until proven guilty. That's the same for anyone. I don't care what political party they're in. But right now, I think the sensible answer is if you've broken the law, you should be held accountable. But from what I'm seeing here, that's not what's going on. This is a weaponization of the Justice Department against political enemies.
Look, if Trump is guilty, then every single president in my lifetime has been guilty of the same and far, far worse. So, I didn't vote for Trump even once. I'm just being honest. That's the reality. We have really, 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 really corrupt and evil people, war criminals, most of them, if not all of them, that are, standing up on their moral, pedestal, talking down about this guy. It's lunacy, particularly when they lied about troop counts in Syria when he was trying to get us out of there. The Russian collusion nonsense, the Ukraine gate, the list goes on and on. And then you also have the recent evidence that just came out about Joe Biden allegedly receiving $5 million in bribes from Burisma. It's like, I just don't know how anyone can look at this and say, oh yeah, this is reasonable. You know, Trump held on to some documents. So like, he's going to be the first president ever to be put in prison. Like, okay.
I think there's some dispute as to whether or not that's illegal, right? I think there's
a lot of dispute. Yeah.
Well, I mean, with respect to what Clinton did when we talked about the Presidential Records Act, you know, whether or not a president has the ability to freely keep whatever records they want to keep and then move forward with their life. I think that was adjudicated when with the Clintons, and that was found to be just fine. But in this instance, it's not. For example, we can talk about Joe Biden and how he kept classified documents in his freaking Corvette, or we can talk about Mike Pence, who also, you know, kept documents. I think it's a good point. Like, if he's guilty, then all of them are guilty, and so we better start
clearly
charging everyone, right?
Yeah, Hillary with their 33,000 acid-washed emails. Like, the list goes on and on. Got a question from Benzo. Says, did LP-CO agree with how the GOP announced this? I assume that they greenlit the announcement, no?
Yeah, I mean, they gave me the written agreement, and we told them that we would go ahead and give it to key leaders within the Republican Party, and then once that got out, it was no longer a secret. So we made an announcement, and we didn't go through every detail on how we announced it, but we had no objections. And I've been talking to Hannah ever since, and we didn't seem to get any pushback from how we announced it. So
okay, yeah, I don't know. Maybe she has some insight. If you have any follow-up, Benzo, feel free to chat it, because I don't know why you asked that. But yeah, honestly, I think it's a really interesting idea. It's going to be a test case. Let's be honest. It could blow up. Like, you guys could end up running someone that we absolutely, despise, and then we'll feel like we were betrayed. And then I'll be right back to square one of not trusting the GOP again. So.
Sure. And I like to tell everyone, this isn't for the Republican Party or the Democrat or Libertarians, but no one should trust any politician. You should always ask yourself, what does a politician have to gain if I believe what they're saying? It's sort of a follow the money type question. That sort of healthy skepticism is going to help out individuals in the long run, because let's face it, most politicians, the one thing they're all good at, regardless of what political party they're in, is they're really good at getting votes. So if they're trying to tell you something, you always ask yourself, how does it benefit them? And I've said that all throughout my career in public life. I'm still saying it now. You should always hold a politician's feet to the fire, because ultimately they should be serving you. I am not I'm not the boss. I answer to the Republican Party, but I also answer to others that I willingly enter into an agreement with, and that includes Hannah and the Libertarian Party. If I'm not upholding my end of the bargain, call me out on it, and that should be applied to everyone who's engaged in politics.
Dave, I'm going to make you a promise right now. I'm giving my tacit approval to this arrangement, but I will absolutely destroy you if you screw me over. Carrie says, would Dave be willing to connect them with the LP Minnesota to have a discussion like this from Minnesota? Many of us in party leadership would be interested in considering this, and we're desperate.
Yeah, you bet. In fact, I can not only connect with you guys, but I can also talk to my counterpart in Minnesota and see what we could do. I mean, I can tell you that Republicans have been pretty accepting of this deal on my end. So I can't imagine why the Minnesota Republicans would scoff at this. So I'd be happy to collaborate and facilitate that discussion.
Yeah, honestly, I think any state that's, purple and leaning pretty hard blue, it's kind of do or die time, folks. Like your state, if you let it go, as unfortunately I did in California, because I was not politically engaged. I was an entrepreneur, and I wasn't focused on trying to salvage my state. I really thought that people would just wake up on their own at some point. But instead, by the time they woke up, all of the people that shared my ideology were fleeing because there was no electoral avenue to remedy what ailed us. And I think that is what you're looking at in Colorado. I think that's what you're looking at in Minnesota. There's a number of states that are right on that, that cusp. So now or never, folks. Get involved. Says red counties and deep blue states should hold their own elections and elect their own governor, if just for show. Well, I mean, that's the other option is that if this fails, I think that secession will probably be what people start to do, or where you have, there's already been movements like that. I think it was Oregon that wanted to break off and become part of Idaho, the Greater Idaho Project. Have you heard about that?
I have. In fact, there was a movement like that for Colorado to break off and actually join Wyoming. I understand the sentiment. I don't think we're quite there yet.
Okay.
I'd rather just try to kick the bums out with the system we have. And if that doesn't work, then, we can always vote with our feet. I can always move. I don't want to, but that's what you're seeing in California.
Yeah, that's last resort stuff. Hector, who's involved with the LP Colorado, he says it doesn't cost the GOP anything to do this, right? So what's the value for LPers? Where's the skin in the game?
It costs the GOP a lot if we don't meet the challenge. We whether or not you believe in the spoiler effect, the GOP believes in the spoiler effect. And we lost competitive races by the slimmest of margins, while we saw libertarians take a pretty good chunk of the voting block that would have made the difference. And so, yeah, and I know there are a lot of libertarians who kind of think that the LP is somehow being subservient to the GOP in this, and they're not looking at it the right way. No, you guys pretty much have us over a barrel. If we want to maximize our chances of defeating Democrats, we better perform. And that's how you should look at it.
Well, yeah, I mean, honestly, I look at this as kind of a victory in some ways, because it shows that we are garnering enough of the vote that we have one of the duopoly parties that's reaching out to us saying, hey, we'll be more like you if you stop screwing us over. I mean, isn't that the whole idea? Isn't that what I mean, from my vantage point, I'm not asking you because you're not with the LP, but I'm speaking to my audience. Isn't that the idea, folks? Isn't that what we wanted? Don't we want people in positions of power that can actually, make our ideas reality? I thought so. I do understand people's hesitancy. I understand their concern, their unwillingness to trust the GOP in any way. I get all of those concerns. I really do. But I do think that this demonstrates that we are now, to some extent, a force to be dealt with, and that hadn't been the case in much of my life. Aside from, Carrie Ann Harlos, the biggest pushback I've seen about this has been not so much the announcement itself, but the way it was announced, at least in libertarian circles. I'll have to follow up with you later to figure out what that's about. Andy says, Clint, what do you make of ostensibly Mises members freaking out over this when this has been the game plan? I think I just answered that, Andy. I don't know what the freak out is. I mean, this isn't exactly the game plan. We want to have libertarians that are running for, in my opinion, the most fruitful lane would be nonpartisan races where you don't have a label, but you just put up one of our best for sheriff or mayor of towns and things like that. And in fact, one of a mayor, I don't know if this is public knowledge, but he's one of us that is a mayor in Colorado, and it's awesome. And I went out there and I hung out with him in his town, and I was like, this is just amazing. Very, very cool that he was able to do that. So I think that to some extent we want to be doing that, but in races, especially state and federal level races, that the Libertarian Party has a very minimal chance of prevailing, if any, then this is probably the best we can hope for. So I don't know. I don't know why people are so upset. Jacob says, no trust for GOP leadership. There is no such thing as rhinos. Only Republicans, some just hide it better. Well, you don't have to trust GOP leadership, but I like Dave, and we'll see if Dave fails me. I don't know. We're going to find out. All right. One more question. Molly says, there are so many planks in the LP platform that are being outright ignored by the current leadership. How will these issues be addressed by the GOP if they won't even be addressed by the LP? I'm not sure which planks you're referencing. So if you want to follow up as quick as possible, because I'm going to get out of here pretty soon. But yeah, I mean, there's going to be disagreements. I mean, there's disagreements within the LP amongst LP members. So there's going to absolutely be disagreements when it comes to stepping aside for a GOP candidate in the state of Colorado. I think that's inevitable, but I still don't see that as, really tremendously different from what we're dealing with right now, but with a chance of actually winning positions of power. So any final comments you got for me, Dave?
No, I think this has been great. I'm more than willing to meet with any other libertarians or members of the Libertarian Party to kind of go over this. I want to make sure that everyone has access to me so that we can have good faith conversations. We are trailblazing. This is sort of history in the making, and I want to make sure that I do my part to uphold our end of the bargain. And if anyone has any criticism or questions or concerns, if you want to cuss or discuss with me, by all means, I'm ready and willing and available.
Absolutely. We've got a couple more. Andy says, thanks for having Dave on. I'm the secretary of LP Colorado and very excited about our opportunity to push back on the progressive takeover of our state. Well, it has been a complete takeover. Hector says, the disagreement here is what is the GOP showing that they'll do their part? What's their skin in the game? I mean, I think that the reality is that if they do this and they make the pledge to push, Hector probably missed the beginning of the stream. LP Colorado and Dave here are working on, a list of agreements that any candidate that they'll run will have to pledge to. And if they won't, well, then we'll run a candidate. We'll run a Libertarian Party candidate and try and eat their lunch. So we actually have some leverage there. Does that mean that once they get into office that they'll do the right things? No. I mean, you never have any real assurance of that, but if that happens, obviously, I think that we'll have a lot of impetus to try and ruin their political career moving forward. So it's kind of a mutual trust thing here. This guy seems genuine and kind, Poperoni says. Thanks for having this discussion. Shout out to Rep. Dave Williams for being a longtime Liberty leader in Colorado. All right. I think that's about it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you want to support my work, go to libertylockdown.locals.com. I am rooting for you guys, Dave. Like I said, we ain't got much time. We really don't. And if this fails, at least we tried. That's all I can say, man. And I really do hope that you're successful in running Thomas Massey-esque candidates. I think that would mean a much brighter tomorrow, and we need it now. So good luck and smooth sailing. We're out of here, folks.
Thank you so much. Take care, Clint.
Peace.
Welcome to Liberty Lockdown. Please scan your barcode. Your liberty ain't gone, but yeah, it's on hold. Where did it come from? And